I woke up before sunrise, the first pale light slipping between the blinds of my small apartment in Oak Park. I brewed coffee the way Daniel likes it, dark roast, no sugar, a habit I never lost even though he hadn't lived with me for years. The kitchen smelled like toasted almonds in memory. I'd bought a navy dress months ago, conservative but elegant. I'd hemmed it myself late one night, pricking my finger as I thought about Daniel as a toddler clinging to my leg, then as a gangly teenager towering over me with that sheepish smile. The venue was a limestone estate just outside the city, with manicured hedges and a reflecting pool that caught the sky like a held breath. I parked near the back lot and sat for a moment, hands on the wheel, steadying myself. I told the dashboard the truth I couldn't say out loud. You did it. You got him here. Inside, vendors whirled past in black attire, earpieces flashing, bouquets gliding like small, fragrant planets. I found the room where the mothers were to wait before the ceremony. Emily's mother, Linda, looked stunning, glossy hair, pale mauve suit, a diamond brooch shaped like a starburst. She offered a tight smile that hovered and faded. "You look nice," she said. "Thank you. You look lovely," I replied, noticing how my voice softened automatically, like pulling a blanket over something fragile. I had tried with Emily, dinners, small gifts, careful compliments, but there was always a film over our interactions, something unspoken. Today I told myself it didn't matter. Weddings are about weaving families together. Today, I wanted to be part of the fabric, not a snag in the thread. When a coordinator poked her head in, 10 minutes, please," my hands began to tremble. I pressed them to my skirt, thinking of Daniel's first broken arm, his first job at the corner cafe, the time we couldn't pay the gas bill, and he pretended it was an adventure to cook hot dogs over the stovetop flame. I wondered if anyone here knew how much we'd carried together to reach this moment. The ceremony space looked like a glass house, sunlight softened by gauzy drapes. Rows of white chairs faced an arch of eucalyptus, and roses the color of sunset sherbet. A quartet tuned up in whispers. When the processional began, I felt tears I had promised myself I wouldn't shed. Emily was radiant. The gown skimmed her shoulders, lace whispering over her skin. Daniel, my son, stood at the altar, a man in a tailored suit, a nervous thumb smoothing his tie. As the officiant spoke, I watched the faces of the guests, amused, emotional, the chins lifted toward love like flowers toward the sun. Then came the line, "Who presents the bride?" And Linda rose with a proud little nod. The moment was perfect for a brief acknowledgement of both families, something like, "We do," or even a gesture toward where I sat. But no one turned. Someone behind me coughed. The quartet reset a note. I felt it like a draft across my shoulders. After the vows, as the couple floated back down the aisle, I waited to catch Daniel's eye. He smiled broadly at the crowd, at the cameras, at the swirl of petals. When his gaze finally found mine, it landed like a bird and lifted again, skittish gone. On the terrace, during photos, I was positioned on the edge of every frame, a tidy bookend. "Now just the immediate family," the photographer called. I stepped in and was redirected with a frown and a gentle hand that guided me back. "We already to the groom's side." "I'm the groom's mother," I said, heat prickling my scalp. "Oh, of course, the photographer fluttered. "We'll get you in the next set." I stood still long enough to feel my smile crack at the corners. Emily avoided my glance, eyes fixed on the lens, on the curated moment. A seating chart printed on acrylic leaned against a gold easel, names in looping calligraphy. I scanned for mine and found it, small among the swirls at table 17, near the back, against a pillar partially blocking the dance floor. The head table glowed under a garland of lights, a constellation of the wedding party. My name gleamed like a distant star. I told myself there had to be a reason. Maybe space, maybe oversight. I've lived long enough to know some slights are accidents, until they aren't. At table 17, a cousin I hadn't seen in years stood to hug me, his wife chattering about the salmon, about parking, about how beautiful the kids looked. Across from me sat Mrs. Garner, a neighbor from Emily's childhood street, who cheerfully announced she got the last vegetarian entree because someone forgot to RSVP. Can you imagine? Near the breadbasket, a place card read, "Reserved for officiant," who never appeared. In his absence, the chair became a ghost. It was a metaphor I tried not to love. When the first course came, endive salad with candied pecans, Daniel moved from table to table, a diplomatic figure, shaking hands, receiving congratulations. He reached ours with a sheen of relief on his forehead. "Mom," he said, leaning down to kiss my temple. "You look beautiful." "Thank you, honey," I replied, letting the word slip out before I remembered that men in suits prefer different names. "Congratulations." I squeezed his fingers. "I'm at 17, I added, making it light, a joke that could be ignored or answered. He winced faintly. They coordinated everything. I should have checked. "It's fine," I lied. "It's a good view of the bar." He laughed dutifully, and then he was gone again, a comet crossing other orbits, leaving me in the tail of his day. Toast began while the lights dimmed to amber. Emily's father stood, voice steady, telling a story about her Girl Scout cookie empire and a dog-eared copy of Little Women. The room laughed on cue. Linda followed with a polished warmth, a voice like radio, speaking about roots and wings. When the best man, Miguel, finished a heartfelt tribute to Daniel, the cafeteria jobs, late-night study sessions, the time Miguel's car died and Daniel pushed it uphill in a blizzard, my heart swelled. This is the part where someone asks the groom's mother to say a few words. In every wedding I'd ever attended, someone had. The MC scanned his card. "And now we'll hand it back to the DJ." A ripple of applause. Silverware chimed against glasses. A nervous silence pooled in front of me, like people were choosing whether to look. I kept my eyes on the base of my water goblet, the ring of condensation gathering like a clock. I could have stood up. I could have spoken without permission. I could have asked. But I had promised myself not to cause a scene. I would not be the story anyone told tomorrow. When the DJ called for parent dances, Linda slid into the spotlight with Daniel for a surprise dance to a jazzy version of "What a Wonderful World." I learned then there had been no mother-son dance planned for me. I swallowed twice, pretending I wasn't newly, absurdly thirsty. Afterward, I went to the restroom, not because I needed to, but because I needed to be somewhere else. In the mirror, the fluorescent light showed me more truth than I'd asked for. I blotted my lips and said to my reflection, "Hold the line." Then I walked back out, spine straight, smile measured, and sat at table 17 as if it had always been my place. It happened fast, the way a glass can slip from your hand and shatter before you realize you dropped it. I saw Emily whisper to the coordinator, then the coordinator approached me with a professional smile, so bright it warned me. "Ma'am," she said, leaning close. "The bride asked that we ensure all photos from here on are just the bridal party and the parents. There's a specific list." "I understand," I replied, though I didn't. I had already been excluded from most of the portraits. What could possibly remain? A few minutes later, as the late-night bites came out, mini sliders and truffle fries, Emily herself appeared, her veil unhooked and trailing behind a bridesmaid. She had a blank, camera-ready face, no mascara smudged, no hint of the champagne glow. "Mrs. Reyes," she said. Formal. Cold. "We need to talk." The music thumped softly, the bass a heartbeat under her words. Guests swayed on the dance floor, oblivious. She positioned herself, so the uplight haloed her, and for a ridiculous second I thought how good she'd look in a photograph of this very moment. "You've made today very difficult," she said, enunciating each word like a bead. I blinked. "How?" "By ignoring boundaries. By inserting yourself. You tried to rearrange seating this morning. You told the florist to change the bouquet. You've been," she glanced around, lowering her voice, "commenting on everything. People noticed." "That's not true," I said quietly, aware of how truth becomes slippery when someone decides on a narrative. "I didn't speak to the florist. I asked a coordinator where I was seated because my name was missing from the first board. She found it later. I complimented the centerpieces." Emily crossed her arms, bouquet dangling like a weapon she was too bored to raise. "We've worked for a year on this. This is mine and Daniel's day. And you're making it about you. I need you to leave." For a moment, everything in the room receded. I could hear the ice machine, the distant ring of a laugh. "You want me to leave the wedding?" I thought I'd misheard. "Yes," she said, voice flat. "Before it gets worse." I stood because that's what you do when someone kicks you. You rise first. My chair's legs scraped the floor, a sound that cut between songs. People turned. Daniel stood across the room, caught in a conversation, confusion flickering across his features as he saw my face. Emily, I said very softly, I raised the man you just married. I will not create a scene, but I will also not pretend this is reasonable. She lifted her chin, jaw set. Please leave. I nodded once. I picked up my small clutch, the one Daniel gave me 2 Christmases ago, and walked past the dance floor. As I reached the vestibule, the DJ, unaware, shouted for everyone to crowd around for a group photo. I kept walking until the night air hit me like cold water. Under the sodium lamps, the estate looked less like a dream and more like what it was, an expensive building at the end of a long drive. Crickets rasped in the hedges. My shoes grated on the gravel. I unlocked my car and sat behind the wheel, hands at 10 and 2, because even now my body remembered its training. I could have driven off, let the humiliation calcify into a story I'd tell months later with a bitter laugh. Instead, I turned off the ignition and laid my forehead on the steering wheel. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister. How is it? Send pics. I stared at the words until the screen dimmed. Someone knocked on my window. It was Miguel in shirt sleeves, tie loosened. He looked worried in a careful way, like someone approaching a skittish animal. I rolled down the window. Mrs. Reyes, he said. Daniel's looking for you. He said you're not answering. I didn't hear it, I said. I needed air. Miguel hesitated. Emily can be intense. She's been planning since before the engagement. It's not about you. It is, I said, not unkindly. But I don't need it to be about me tonight. He shifted. Daniel asked if you could come back in. He didn't know she talked to you. I pictured Daniel, a pen and a map. Everyone else was drawing lines around. If I go back, she'll be angrier. If I don't, I'm the villain in a different story. I rubbed my temples. Tell him I love him. Tell him I'm proud. And tell him we'll talk tomorrow. Miguel nodded, relief and regret sharing space on his face. Do you want me to walk you out? I'm okay. When he left, I sat and listened to the muffled thud of bass across the lawn. I thought of the time Daniel asked for a second piece of birthday cake when he was 9 and I said no because there was only enough for his friends. He didn't cry, just nodded like he understood something about limits. I had taught him not to make a fuss. Tonight, I chose not to, too. I started the car and drove into the quiet, the road ahead unspooling under the streetlights. At 7:12 a.m., my phone rang. Daniel's name on the screen tugged at my chest. I let it ring twice, so I wouldn't sound breathless. Mom, he said, voice rough. Where did you go? Miguel said. He said Emily. He trailed off. Did she ask you to leave? She did. I answered, keeping my tone steady. And I did. I didn't want to make trouble. Silence. Then, I'm so sorry. He sounded older than yesterday, tired. I didn't know. She said there were issues with the vendors. She said you were stressed and needed to rest. I was not stressed, I said. I was hurt. There's a difference. I should have noticed, he said. I should have stepped in. You were getting married, I replied. It shouldn't have been your job to manage anyone. He exhaled, a sound like a collapse. Can I come over? An hour later, he arrived with coffee and a guilt that hung around his shoulders. We sat at my small kitchen table, ringed by sunlight and the quiet hum of the refrigerator. He told me bits and pieces. How Emily had been on edge for weeks, how Linda had a list for everything, how he'd been told certain traditions were being streamlined to keep the day efficient. Did you know there wasn't going to be a mother-son dance? I asked. He swallowed. I found out this week. She said it would run too long, that we could do a dance with you at the rehearsal dinner, but then it didn't happen. I nodded. I wish you told me, honey. I would have prepared my heart. He pressed his palms together. I'm going to talk to her. She can't treat you like that. Daniel, I said gently, when you talk to her, don't make it about punishment. Make it about boundaries. She and I have a history of missing each other. We need to stop guessing and say things plainly. He looked at me the way he did when he was little, and I explained big things. Taxes, grief, the reason we returned cans for change. How are you so calm? He asked. I've been humiliated before, I said, a small smile at the edge of truth. It doesn't kill you. It does, however. teach you how to walk out gracefully. 2 days later, Emily texted, "Can we talk?" I agreed to meet at a cafe in Wicker Park, a place filled with plants and the soft hiss of milk steaming. I arrived first and took a table by the window. When Emily entered, the barista looked up because she had that presence. Clean lines, white blouse, hair smoothed into a sleek knot. She sat without preamble. "I owe you an apology," she said, eyes focused on the table. I was awful." "Yes," I said quietly. She flinched, surprised by the simple confirmation. I didn't add padding. I had decided kindness isn't pretending harm was smaller. Her throat moved as she swallowed. My parents' marriage was complicated. My mom controlled everything because my dad was always gone, traveling for work. When he was home, he criticized. There was no space for me. Planning the wedding became the one thing I could control. I didn't realize how tight I was gripping it until people tried to help. It felt like being pushed out of my own day. "I wasn't trying to push you out," I said. "I've spent Daniel's entire life stepping aside so he could shine. I thought a wedding was a place where love had more than one spotlight." Tears gathered in her eyes, precise ripples before a spill. "I thought you didn't like me." "Why?" I asked, genuinely curious. "The first time we met, you asked Daniel if I liked spicy food," she said, almost a laugh. "It sounds dumb now, but my ex used to mock me for not liking jalapenos. I heard your question like an echo of his. And then, when we moved in together, Daniel mentioned how hard it was when you were alone with him, and I built the story that you'd always be between us somehow. That I had to set the terms, or I'd vanish." I let her finish. "Emily," I said, "I have no desire to be between you. I want to be around you both. There's a difference." She nodded, wiping her cheek with the edge of a napkin. "I humiliated you." "I'm sorry. I accept your apology," I said. "But apologies aren't glue. If we're going to fix this, we need to change how we talk to each other." "How?" she whispered. "We start by naming things early, not at the altar. We set expectations. And when one of us feels the urge to eject the other from a room, we take a walk instead." She let out an unsteady breath that was almost a laugh. "Deal," she said, offering her hand. I shook it, and then, because we are humans and not contracts, I squeezed it like passing a current between us. Daniel invited me to their apartment for dinner the following Saturday. The building was a renovated brownstone with a charmingly stubborn front door and a flight of stairs that reminded my knees they were, in fact, middle-aged. Inside, the shelves were lined with cookbooks and wedding gifts. A stand mixer like a sculpture, a set of copper pans gleaming like trophies, a framed photograph of the two of them at the lakefront. No wedding photos yet. That felt right. Emily cooked a lemon chicken that made the air smell like summer's the first thought I'd forgotten. We set the table together. There were small awkwardnesses, reaching for the same glass, sidestepping in the galley kitchen, saying sorry too many times. But the apology had done its first job. It made space. Over dinner, Daniel cleared his throat. "We're meeting with the photographer next week," he said. "We want to do a smaller, more candid session with both families. No stiff lineups. Just us." "I'd like that," I said. "And," Emily added, glancing at me, "we'd like to have a dance. If you want, we'll put on your favorite song. It doesn't have to be fancy. Just here in the living room." The offer hit me with a gentle force. My favorite song is an old Sam Cooke track that Daniel used to tease me about, saying it sounded like warm bread. I nodded, unable to trust my voice. After dinner, we stacked plates like a team that had practiced. Emily lingered at the sink, then said, "There's one more thing. My mom has a way of taking over. I don't always notice when it's happening, and then I'm carrying out her plan instead of my own. I need you to tell me if you see it before I do." "I can do that," I said. "And when I step too close, you tell me and I'll step back." Daniel laughed softly. "Look at us. Actual adults. We put on music. Not Sam Cooke, too on the nose, but something mellow with a bass line like a heartbeat. The living room furniture scraped as we made a little dance floor. The three of us moved subtly, not a dance so much as a shared sway. It wasn't the mother-son dance I had imagined, but it was truer. It had the unphotographed beauty of all the small days that make a family. Months later, a framed photo arrived in the mail. It was from the second session, the candid one. In it, I'm laughing, head thrown back, eyes closed, while Daniel reaches for a slice of pizza and Emily leans into my shoulder, her hair loose, her face unguarded. On the coffee table sits a record sleeve with Sam Cooke's smile. There are no roses, no arch, no lace. Just us in a room where we had decided to be kind. When people ask about the wedding, I don't lie. It was beautiful, I say, because it was, in its own complicated way. And when friends lean in and whisper, "But I heard something happened," I tell them the truth that matters. The bride humbled me, I say. Not because she was cruel, though she was, but because life is wider than my pride. I left so I wouldn't break something that would be harder to mend. And then we talked. We made rules. We made amends. We made room. At night, when I cannot sleep, I replay not the moment I walked out, but the morning in my kitchen with Daniel's big hands wrapped around a coffee cup, and the cafe where Emily's apology trembled at the edge of her voice, and the living room where we danced like the future was something we could shape gently with our bodies. I still wish I'd had a mother's son dance at the reception. I still wish I'd sat closer and been asked to speak. Those wishes don't vanish. They sit quietly beside the good that came after. That's adulthood, I think, holding joy in one hand and disappointment in the other without crushing either. On his birthday, Daniel came by with a cake he'd baked in the copper pan, frosting imperfect and perfect. We ate it with coffee at my small table. He looked around my apartment, at the plants and the stack of library books, and the navy dress hanging in a garment bag I hadn't had the heart to move. "Hey, Mom," he said, voice low. "Thank you. For not making it worse. For making it better." "Thank you," I replied, because gratitude belongs to whoever shows up and tries again. The story of the wedding will always have the moment I was told to leave, but it will also have the light in the glass house, the soft thud of bass, the hush of the parking lot, the clink of cups in a cafe, the slide of a coffee table to make a dance floor. It will have my son's hand on my shoulder and his wife's hand on my hand. In the end, that's the story I choose to tell. Not the humiliation, but the bridge we built afterward. One honest conversation, one careful boundary, one small, ordinary dance at a time.